Actually, this is a really great tool to revisit dopamine reward, instant gratification, and what it does to us adults and also to younger people like my son, and how we can teach them to live their life more consciously and eventually more healthy. So I love this cookie save. It's a really interesting thing. It's a great invention actually, and you can set the time and then lock this thing, and there's a countdown, and then everything that is in it, whether it's cookie, a smartphone or anything in your life, will be locked for at least 20 minutes. You can make the time longer for hours. Just think of that. If you would put your smartphone, your mobile here into this safe, and it will be locked for, let's say, 5 hours. Just imagine that. How would you feel? Yeah, maybe you would be a little bit anxious because all your life is basically in that mobile, right? I think this is a beautiful, let's say, teacher for us to what we're dependent on and what not. And it tells us a lot about dopamine reward and instant gratification. Why is that so important? So first thing is, dopamine per se is not a bad thing. Why should have nature then invented dopamine? Actually, the reward system is quite tremendous. It enables us to learn new things, whether it's a sport, whether it's something you read, whether it's, engaging in something where you try to accomplish anything, a project, a program. You're an entrepreneur. You want to start something new. We need dopamine to keep on going. There's a reward coming, we feel the pleasure of accomplishments, and this stimulates and motivates us. It sets us actually into movement. That's why we have emotions, and that's why the word movement is in the Latin word emovere, right? So it sets a lot of emotions in motion so that we can foster and work on our projects and follow our dreams, aspirations, whatever. But also it can, especially in the time of digital media and everything, it can be quite a challenge. For example, I'm a trained lawyer, and I was trained to look up all the sources. I always want to get to the source, to the original source. So whenever I read a book, for example, a really interesting one from Daniel Levitin is The Organized Mind. And he's a researcher, he's a professor. It's a brilliant book. And it's full of references. So Daniel here makes a lot of references to other researchers, previous research who live and research still today, who publish other great books. So when I read something from a really interesting person, and he's referencing other persons that are even as brilliant as him, my brain goes wild. There's some I want to know this person. I want to look up the other publications. So it's hard for me to stay on one page, and it would be even easier for me if the author wouldn't reference too much, just tell the story, just tell the facts. But if I get references, I want to look them up. And then I look up and I come to a lot of other interesting papers, to a lot of other, let's say, books from the authors that are mentioned here. And so that brings me on another route, and I'm kind of losing my flow in studying this book, for example. This also has some good side effects. For example, I'm studying listening, or the effects of generative attention. And if you're into listening, you will find a lot of resources. I'm talking about Nancy Klein, Time to Think, for example. Also spiritual people like Henry Nouwen, who talked about the hospitality of listening. Rachel Naomi Remen, who did a lot of work on generous listening, especially for clients, for people in hospice who are suffering. However, if you follow that path, you will come along to Carl Rogers, who brought listening into the therapeutic world. And this is the original. This is the first, book on active listening. He coined that term. The term got, has been taken to the field of economy, to the field of business. But this is kind of the original one, and it was totally worth to get this original source. So you see, there are a lot of reasons why I should follow this kind of dopamine call, this kind of urge to go there. And at the same time, there can be a challenge. For example, there are way too many books on my shelf right now. There are way too many books in my Amazon wish list. So what to do about that? So let me talk about the second point, which is how can we work with this urge to go after things that give us pleasure and that give us reward, and maybe how to work and to delay even instant gratification. So one simple trick I'm using is I know one thing I'm good at, and people get mad about me when I do this. When I receive a gift from someone is sending gifts now. For this is now the Christmas time, someone's sending a gift. I can put it aside and leave it there for days. And everyone around me gets crazy. Why don't you open that gift, that wrapped gift? It's so beautiful. And I say, yeah, it's beautiful. I like to see it for some days and then wait for the, let's say, perfect moment, for a moment where I have full attention. I don't want to unwrap it between now and, the next minute and the next meeting. I want it really intentional. And somehow I don't have a problem not to open a box that I just have received. Other people get crazy when they see that, and I'm using that. I'm aware about that, and so I'm using that also with a lot of processes that that give you instant gratification. For example, ordering a book. My strategy now, and this is my commitment with myself, if I see an interesting book, I do several things. I put it into, let's say, the Amazon shopping cart or whatever, where you buy your books, right? So if you buy it digitally, it's easy. But then you may say, but there's the Kindle version, right? The ebook version. Then you can first just get the preview and then make a commitment to yourself. If you read through the preview fully and still find it interesting, you can do a second thing. There are a lot of great book summaries on YouTube or on Blinkist or wherever. And then I will look up a book summary or even read a review about the book. And if I have done this and I still find that book so interesting, maybe it takes me days to do so, then I will go back to the shopping cart and eventually buy the book. You may say, oh, Motoki, what's the problem? I mean, there are worse behaviors than buying too many books, right? Yes, there are some more, let's say, unhealthy, bad behaviors or addictions, let's say. But also there is some frustration if you have too many books on your shelf and you don't get to read them. So I don't want to demotivate myself. I want to stay on track. If I want to read through the organized mind, because I'm teaching about it, there are some aspects of building a second brain. There are some aspects on how to organize, let's say, our lives and our brains in a digital age. I want to get through the book and really get this, the essence of Daniel Levitin's teachings. And then, if I'm through that book, I know he has a lot of more interesting books around. I'm a musician, so Daniel Levitin studied the brain on music, the brain with creativity. He's now into researching and publishing a lot about aging. I'm turning 50, so I'm really interested in that. But the promise I give to myself is I will leave it in a shopping bag or I will leave it on a wish list. Someone can gift me that book. Okay, that's one part. But if I'm done with this book, the reward will be I get the next book from Daniel Levitin. And if for some reason I'm not interested in the book anymore, so be it. Then, and this is surfing the urge. This is a great tip you get from a lot of researchers on instant gratification. So Nir Eyal will talk about traction and attraction in his book. And he comes back actually to some old techniques from acceptance and commitment therapy. The basic recommendation is if you feel the urge to do something, let's say you're in a boring seminar and you watch a boring movie maybe and you want to look up your smartphone with social media. There are two ways how you can kind of handle this situation. One thing is you can allow yourself to do that, but kind of make the commitment to reflect on that later. So you give in, but you do this intentionally. Or the other most simple trick is just to postpone this urge to, look up something on social media or whatever, to grab a snack, whatever that is, by 10 minutes. And then just come back. Promise yourself you can come back in 10 minutes, and if it's still important, or it seems to be urgent, or it seems to be pleasurable at this moment, then you can give in. It's still relevant. So coming back to my cookie safe, actually wow, 10 minutes is already over. So whatever is in that box, let's say, that should give me instant gratification. I think the teaching or the lesson learned here is maybe after 10 minutes it's not so important. Maybe it's good to have a break, to make a pause, and to reflect on this. Actually, the great thing about the cookie safe is I'm just imagining that there's something really important in it here. I can even meditate for the rest of the seconds and minutes, right? And really think, is it really important for me? Take a deep breath, and maybe the situation will change. I think breaks and pauses are something really beautiful. And let me get a little bit philosophical here. I promise not to become super religious or super spiritual here, but let me be a little bit philosophical here. Why do we need breaks? Well, basically our whole hormone and stress system is built like that. You know, if you don't have breaks, the stress levels will add up over the day, and you will be super burned out at the end of the day. Imagine weeks where you don't have breaks and pauses. If you do that for a longer time, and I can talk for myself, being an entrepreneur, having multiple agencies, employees, customers, great things, but if I don't rest every week, then it will build up. And after some weeks, I will be kind of burned out. I will run out of creative ideas. I will run out of inspiration. I will not have the patience to listen to customer needs, to listen to employment things, to listen to my tax advisor, whatever. I'm losing my patience, and I'm losing kind of that, what people normally say, if I remember or recall any qualities about Motoki, this is ABC. And I'm losing especially these things. Let's say my calmness, my attention, whatever. So breaks are super important. And it's really on a micro level. Like each hour you should have a break. Between meetings you should have a break. During the day we should all have a break. And during the week. And there's a person I really like a lot, and I really admire his profession. This is Stefan Sagmeister. He's maybe the leading graphic designer creative on the world. If you know people who have given 1 or 2 TED Talks, Stefan Sagmeister, I think, has given 4 TED Talks, and the number of people watched it is over 10 million in some. But what's interesting about is that Stefan Sagmeister really came up with the concept of a sabbatical when it was not so famous, when it was not even into corporations or consultancies. The idea of a sabbatical. And where does this idea come from? Actually, it's a Jewish tradition, right? The Sabbath. And the Sabbath rest is something really beautiful. And again, I don't want to convince you to any religion here. I just want to think of what can we learn from that. Because what people really miss out about the idea of a Sabbath rest, about a sabbatical, is, and most of the time, if you're like me, you're working during the week, and then you're kind of heading into the weekend. And the weekend is kind of the final stage of a week. And there, the promise of rest, calm, recreation is there. And that's a good thing to do so. But basically, it's not the idea of the Sabbath rest. Actually, the Sabbath rest is another idea where you start and you come out of that rest into the week. You're not escaping from the week, but you're coming out of a position and an intention of rest into the week. That's why the Sabbath, in the original meaning, is the first day of the week, not the last day. And just think of that, what this change of perspective could mean for you. What if you would approach anything in life, your projects, your next meeting, your next to-do, whatever, out of a position of rest. And not do all the things that are on the list, and then finally hoping at the end of the day you will find some rest. And then you're even too tired to enjoy that rest. So what would change for you, I wonder, if you would start with the first thing of a day from a position of rest? What if you would give yourself the allowance to start the day with a, let's say, micro retreat, with some spacious time to journal, to sit, to meditate, and then go after all the things. I think what I learned from this, and that's why my daily routine is so important for me, is that if I don't do that, I have a ton of important and urgent things on my list. But to be honest, if I do this, let's say, micro retreat in the beginning of the day, I journal for myself, I catch some UV light, I go out with the dog, get some fresh air, do a little bit of stretching, exercise, and then come back to what is like so important and urgent, these things have changed from their perspective. Like all the urgent things, maybe there are only a few really urgent things left. From all the important things, I really have the sense of what is truly important for me and for others as well. So I come with a kind of a clear and peaceful mind. And that is, I think, the beauty of this idea of a Sabbath rest, like in the Jewish tradition. And I think we can learn a lot of that. I think we can learn a lot of that in terms of instant gratification, in terms of dopamine reward, and all these things that are kind of neuroscientifically now explored with Andrew Huberman and all these people at these days. But somehow there's, in all these traditions, there's this rich wisdom which comes from ancient times. And now science is kind of backing up, right? But we can maybe rely on that wisdom. So my question to you is, and I'm really hoping you leave some comments on what you think about this. What would change for you if the first thing in the day, the first thing in the week, the first thing, let's say, in a month, or even in the new year, which is approaching right now, would be really this space you're gifting yourself, the space of rest and calm and something that allows you to be by yourself, to really sit with yourself, to know that, you're just enough as you are. And then there's this world out there, and there are all these possibilities. So I wonder if that is an interesting thought for you. Please let me know, and see you soon.